There were nights when I lay awake for hours, not because of coffee, not because of deadlines, but because my mind simply refused to rest. Thoughts raced endlessly about the future, about unfinished tasks, about past mistakes. Like waves crashing on the shore, they kept coming. No pause, no mercy. Have you ever felt that way? Like your mind was a machine with no off switch. Your body is tired, but your thoughts are wide awake. You crave peace, but inside there's a storm. Restlessness of the mind, it's a modern epidemic, and yet it's not new. We live in a world that never sleeps. Notifications, news, endless scrolling. Our attention is being pulled in 100 directions every single second. In a world like this, how can the mind possibly find stillness? Then I discovered Stoicism, an ancient philosophy from over 2,000 years ago. But what surprised me wasn't its age. It was how accurately and unapologetically it addressed the restless mind. Stoicism doesn't comfort you with sweet lies or distractions. It doesn't offer escape. Instead, it teaches you to face yourself, to look directly at your thoughts, and to rule them. Today, I want to invite you on a journey into the wisdom of those who lived long before us, but struggled just like us with anxiety, with worry, with chaos inside. People like Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor burdened by war and grief, yet who wrote each night about peace, discipline, and inner control. Together, we'll explore the core of Stoic thought, what it says about the mind, about control, about acceptance, and more importantly, how to live it. Because Stoicism is not just something you read, it's something you practice every day. In silence, in struggle, in thought. We'll combine personal stories, historical insights, deep philosophical reflection, and most importantly, practical guidance so that you don't just listen to these ideas, you live through them. This video isn't about removing your thoughts, it's about learning to see them clearly, without fear, to step back from the noise and realize, peace isn't the absence of thought, it's the presence of mastery. So let us begin this search for the Stoic cure to a restless mind. Coming up in part 2, we'll uncover the true nature of an anxious mind, why it behaves the way it does, and why forcing positivity often backfires. Are you ready to go deeper? The nature of a restless mind, why we struggle inside. I used to believe that a restless mind was a sign of ambition, of being driven, creative, productive. I thought that the more I worried, the more I cared, that mental chaos was a kind of fuel. But over time, that fuel began to burn me out. What began as thinking ahead became what I called being aware turned into anxiety. The thoughts no longer inspired action, they paralyzed it. The mind I once relied on had become a room I couldn't escape from, and I started to wonder, why is it like this? Why does the human mind so easily fall into this loop of fear, self-doubt, and obsessive planning? The Stoics saw this long before modern psychology gave it a name. They understood the restless mind not as a weakness, but as a consequence of misunderstanding our own nature. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But most of us live backwards. We try to control what's outside, other people's opinions, the outcomes of our efforts, the chaos of the world, while our inner world is left unattended. We let our thoughts run wild, unexamined, uninterrupted, like a child left alone in a room full of sharp tools. Here's the truth that Stoics understood. A restless mind is the result of trying to control what you were never meant to control. Me give you a personal example. There was a time when I couldn't stop obsessing over the future. What if my work wasn't good enough? What if I failed? What if things didn't go as planned? Each scenario replayed in my mind like a broken record, and no matter how much I tried to stay positive, it never lasted. The problem wasn't my situation, it was my relationship with uncertainty. You see, the human brain hates uncertainty. From a biological standpoint, our minds are wired to seek patterns, to predict outcomes, to reduce threats. But in the modern world, the threats aren't lions or famines, they're emails, expectations, deadlines, and the fear of not being enough. So the mind does what it was trained to do. It keeps scanning for danger. It plays worst-case scenarios. It replays past failures. Not because it wants to torture you, but because it wants to protect you. And yet, the protection becomes a prison. The Stoics were not neuroscientists, but they understood this mechanism better than most modern thinkers. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." How often do you suffer not because of what happened, but because of what you think might happen? That is the restlessness Stoicism addresses by denying it, but by exposing its root. They teach us to shift from reaction to observation, from control to acceptance, from fear to clarity. Here's what Epictetus tells us: some things are up to us, and some are not. That sounds simple, but it is the foundation of Stoic calm. When we fail to distinguish between what is within our control, our thoughts, actions, intentions, and then what is not, other people, the past, the future, we invite restlessness. We try to carry the weight of the world on shoulders meant only to carry our own judgment, and over time, that burden breaks us. So let's be clear, a restless mind is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's a sign that your attention is misplaced. It's not that you think too much, it's that you think about the wrong things in the wrong way. The Stoic remedy doesn't silence the mind, it disciplines it. It doesn't destroy emotion, it guides it with reason. This is the beginning of real freedom, not from thought itself, but from being enslaved by your thoughts. In the next part of our journey, we will learn exactly how the Stoics trained their minds, not with rituals or mantras, but with clear reasoning, daily discipline, and deep self-honesty. You don't have to silence your thoughts, you just have to stop obeying all of them. Let me know and I'll begin writing it right away. Stoic mental training, daily disciplines to calm the inner storm. There was a time in my life when every morning felt like a battle. The alarm clock rang and I would already feel behind. My heart would race, my thoughts would scatter. I hadn't even left the bed, but my mind had already sprinted into a dozen what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. And then one day, I came across a line that stopped me. It was from Marcus Aurelius. When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. I read it again slower, and something shifted. What if the first thought of the day wasn't fear, but clarity? Not anxiety, but intention. This is the heart of Stoic mental training. It's not about mastering the world, it's about mastering your attention moment by moment. The Stoics didn't wait for peace to arrive. They trained their minds daily, like warriors sharpen their swords not for show, but for survival. So how did they do it? Let's start with their morning reflection. Before the day began, Marcus Aurelius would write in his journal, not for fame, not for others, but for himself. In the quiet before dawn, he would prepare his mind. Today you will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, and unsocial. But I will not be harmed by them, for none can degrade me unless I allow it. This wasn't pessimism. It was mental preparation. He didn't wake up hoping the world would be kind. He woke up ready for it not to be ungrounded. His peace. In that readiness you can do this too. Each morning, ask yourself, what kind of day am I walking into? What emotions might arise? What values will I hold on to no matter what? Write it down, speak it aloud. That one habit alone can shift the direction of your entire day. Then comes the midday awareness. The Stoics believed in constant self-checks. Epictetus advised, keep before your eyes daily death and exile, and all things which appear terrible, but most especially death. And you will never have a mean thought, nor will you desire anything excessively. What he meant was, remind yourself of what truly matters. Pause, breathe, reflect. If you find yourself consumed by stress or caught in irritation, ask, is this worth my peace? Because the truth is, most of the things that disturb us are not worth the reaction we give them. Finally, there was the evening review. Seneca once wrote, "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and measure my actions and thoughts." This was the Stoics' daily audit. No judgment, just reflection. What did I do well? Where did I let my emotions override my reason? What can I improve tomorrow? This nightly ritual is not about guilt. It's about growth. You don't need a perfect day, you need a mind that's willing to return again and again to what truly matters. And that is what Stoic discipline really is, returning to clarity, again and again, until it becomes a way of being. I remember trying this practice for the first time: morning reflection, midday awareness, evening review. And no, it didn't fix everything overnight, but slowly I started noticing something. I was no longer at the mercy of my mind. I was training it not with force, but with focus, not with repression, but with reason. This is the Stoic path, not dramatic, not loud, but powerful, steady, a kind of quiet strength that builds over time, because the goal is not to eliminate chaos from the world. It is to build a mind that remains still within it. The hidden chains, attachment, and the source of inner restlessness. Took me a long time to realize that many of the things that caused my anxiety were things I secretly refused to let go of. Control, recognition, certainty, even the image I had of myself. I clung to them, not physically, but mentally. I needed them to feel safe. And yet, the more tightly I held on, the more restless I became. The Stoics called this kind of grasping attachment, and they saw it not just as a source of emotional pain, but as the root of much human suffering. Epictetus put it plainly: it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Think about that. It's not losing the job that breaks us, it's our belief that we can't be or without it. It's not the silence of someone we love, it's our fear of being unloved. It's not uncertainty, it's our resistance to it. Attachment is not love, it is fear disguised as need. When you become attached to a specific outcome, a certain status, a certain way things should be, you're no longer living in the world. You're living in an idea of the world, and every time reality doesn't match your expectations, your mind reacts with tension, frustration, panic. That is the storm behind the storm. The Stoics didn't tell us to become numb, they taught us to become free. And freedom doesn't come from getting what you want. It comes from wanting only what is within your power. Marcus Aurelius, a man who had everything: power, wealth, armies, wrote this in his private journal: receive without pride, let go without attachment. He knew that nothing he possessed was truly his. His body could fail, his friends could die, his empire could collapse. But what remained his always was his judgment, his values, and his choices. There's a profound strength in that kind of detachment, not the coldness of indifference, but the clarity that says, I will give my full heart to this moment, but I do not need it to go my way in order to be at peace. That is Stoic detachment. That is the quiet confidence of someone who has trained their mind to say, I will try, I will care, but I will not cling. There was a period in my life when I was waiting for things to settle so I could feel calm again. I kept saying, once I finish this project, I'll finally rest. Once this person understands me, I'll be okay. But life doesn't work that way. There's always another project, another opinion, another uncertainty, and I realized I wasn't tired because life was hard. I was tired because I was constantly fighting reality. The Stoic remedy: let go of what you cannot command, and anchor yourself in what you can. Your effort, your virtue, your presence. Your response. There is no need to grip so tightly. The world will move with or without your permission, but your inner world, that's yours to govern if you choose to lead it. Let's be honest. Letting go isn't easy. We fear that without our attachments, we'll become empty. But the Stoics show us something different. Letting go doesn't create emptiness. It creates space. Space. For peace, for resilience, for freedom. That is how we begin to cure the restless mind. Not by controlling everything around us, but by loosening our grip on what we were never meant to control in the first place. In part 5, we'll explore the concept of amor fati, the Stoic art of loving fate, not merely accepting what happens, but embracing it, even when it's painful. Because peace isn't just in letting go, it's in learning to love what remains. Amor fati, the Stoic art of loving what is. There's a story I often come back to. It's said that when the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius lost several of his children to illness, he didn't collapse under grief. He didn't curse the heavens, or ask, "Why me?" Instead, he returned to his journal, as he always did, and wrote simply, "You were born to deal with this. So be it." There's something almost inhuman about that level of calm, isn't there? To love, to lose, and then to bow your head not in defeat, but in acceptance. But Marcus wasn't denying pain. He wasn't pretending it didn't hurt. That he was practicing something far deeper than acceptance. He was practicing amor fati, the love of fate, not just tolerating what happens, not just enduring it, but learning to embrace it even when it hurts. This, perhaps, is one of the hardest lessons the Stoics offer us. Because let's be honest, there are things that happen to us that feel completely unfair. Illness, rejection, injustice, loss, things we never asked for. Things we would never choose, and yet, the Stoics challenge us to choose how we meet them. Friedrich Nietzsche later echoed this Stoic ideal when he wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, not merely to bear what is necessary, but to love it." Let that sink in. To love what is necessary. There is a kind of freedom that comes not when life finally aligns with your expectations, but when you learn to align yourself with life, as it is. This doesn't mean you give up, that it doesn't mean you stop growing or striving. It means that whatever life hands you, you respond, not with bitterness, but with dignity. I remember a personal moment that tested this idea. Years ago I was working on something I deeply cared about. I put in months of effort, sacrificed weekends, poured my heart into it, and just days before it was complete, it all fell apart unexpectedly, completely, and without a second chance. At first, I was angry, then I felt ashamed, then numb, but somewhere, in the stillness that followed, I asked myself a Stoic question. What if this too was meant for me? Not in a fatalistic way, but in the way a sculptor looks at a block of marble, and sees not the flaw but the form hidden within. What if this failure was not the end but the material I was meant to shape myself from? That is amor fati. It is seeing each event in your life as something given to you, not to destroy you, but to forge you. Every disappointment a lesson in humility, every loss a deepening of gratitude, every setback a sharpening of your patience. The Stoics believed the universe was not chaotic, but governed by that everything happens according to nature, and therefore, everything is an opportunity to live according to virtue. Epictetus said, "Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well." But how do we do that? How do we love what we didn't want? It starts with small moments. When plans fall apart, pause, breathe, ask yourself, how can I use this? When someone misunderstands you, instead of defensiveness. Try stillness. Say, this is a chance to practice patience when things don't go your way. Whisper amor fati. Over time, those small acts of surrender build something stronger than control. They build trust not in fate as a force outside of you, but in your own ability to face whatever comes, and still remain whole. And there's a paradox here. The more you stop resisting life, the more powerful you become within it. This is what the Stoics knew, that loving fate isn't about giving up. It's about rising up through fate like fire that consumes everything in its path and still keeps burning. In Part 6, we'll bring Stoic ideas even closer to the ground by exploring emotional resilience, how to handle fear, sadness, anger, without being ruled by them. Not by suppressing emotion, but by transforming it. Because the mind may be restless, but the heart too must be trained to stand still. Emotional resilience, the Stoic way to face fear, sadness, and anger. There's a quiet lie that many of us have been told, that to be strong means to feel nothing, that a Stoic is someone who pushes emotions away, who never cries, never flinches, never feels afraid. But that is not Stoicism. That is denial. The Stoics never taught us to kill our emotions. They taught us to understand them, to observe them, and then most powerfully to transform them, because emotion itself is not the enemy. Being ruled by emotion is. Let me take you back to a moment. I was facing a difficult decision, one that would change the direction of my life. I was afraid. Not the kind of fear that makes you scream, but the silent, slow-burning kind. The kind that sits in your chest at night and whispers all the ways you might fail. And in that moment, I remembered a line from Seneca: we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. That hit me, because my fear wasn't based on what had happened. It was based on what might happen. I was playing out 100 futures, none of which were real. I was creating my own suffering, with my own thoughts. The Stoics call this pre-emotion prapathos. It's the initial response, the flash of fear, the surge of anger, the sting of sadness. That, they said, is natural. It's what comes next that defines your character. Epictetus said, when you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger. What he's telling us is this: emotions are teachers. They show us where we're still unfree. Anger may reveal our attachment to pride. Fear may reveal our unwillingness to surrender. Sadness may point to what we have not yet accepted. Instead of suppressing them, the Stoics invite us to question them. Why am I angry? Is it because I expected something I never had control over? Why am I sad? Is it because I lost something I thought I owned? Why am I afraid? Is it because I'm projecting a story that hasn't happened yet? These are not easy questions. They require courage, emotional courage, the kind of strength that isn't loud, but quiet. The kind that sits with the discomfort and says, I will not run. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the Roman Empire, likely sat with such emotions each night as he wrote his meditations alone in the flicker of lamplight, surrounded by wars, death, betrayal. Yet he never let those emotions define his actions. He wrote, the nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength. Think about that. Calm is strength, not passivity, not numbness, but the steady hand in a storm. The man or woman who feels the fear and still does the right thing, who feels the anger and still speaks with clarity, who feels the sadness and still chooses to stand up again. That is Stoic resilience, and it can be trained. How? Through reflection each day. Take a few moments to review your emotional responses. Don't judge them, just see them. With time, awareness builds power. through journaling. Write out your emotions before they consume you. Ask the questions, dig deeper, as Marcus did, as Seneca did, through detachment from identity. You are not your anger. You are not your fear. These are visitors, you are the host. You choose how long they stay. Through practice in small moments, when someone cuts you off in traffic, when a plan falls through, when someone forgets your worth. These are your training grounds, because in the end, Stoic strength is not proven in grand gestures. It is proven in the everyday control of your inner world, to feel deeply and yet not lose your center that is power, to hurt and yet still act with reason that is mastery. To sit beside your sadness without becoming it, that is peace. The Stoics didn't want you to become a stone. They wanted you to become a mountain, immovable, yet alive, quiet, yet aware, firm, yet compassionate. In part 7, we'll move from the emotional to the existential, exploring how the Stoics faced the greatest uncertainty of all, death, and why contemplating it might just be the key to living fully, freely, and with inner peace. Because to cure the restless mind, you must confront its deepest fear. Memento mori, facing the final fear. It begins in silence, not a dramatic silence with cinematic pauses and ominous tones, but a quiet that creeps in during the early hours of the morning when the rest of the world is still and your thoughts begin to stir. It's the kind of silence that stretches deep and long, as if time itself has slowed down to whisper something ancient and inevitable. And in that silence, the question comes not shouted, but softly, like a breeze brushing through the leaves of your soul. What if I don't wake up tomorrow? At first, you recoil. Who wants to think about that? We distract ourselves, scroll a little more, check the time, shift our position in bed. But the thought lingers, not out of malice, not to cause dread, but to invite something else, clarity. The Stoics never ran from this question. They walked toward it. They studied it, they made it part of their daily ritual. Seneca, that master of elegant thought and brutal honesty, wrote, "He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a man who is alive." In one stroke, he unmasked a powerful truth, that to fear death is to fear life itself. Today, we do everything in our power to avoid thinking about death. We soften it with euphemisms, avoid it in conversation, and sanitize it in hospitals. We chase youth, freeze wrinkles, flood our calendars, and distract our minds because, in the background, the ticking clock reminds us of a truth we'd rather not hear. But the Stoics turned toward that clock. They didn't romanticize death, but they didn't deny it either. They greeted it not as an enemy, but as a teacher. Their motto was, memento mori, remember, you must die. 3 words, not meant to terrify, but to liberate, because when your mind is restless, what is it truly afraid of? Losing time, losing meaning, losing identity. Doesn't beneath it all, the fear of ceasing to be. We think if we avoid death, we can prolong peace, but the Stoics knew the opposite is true. To accept death is the beginning of true peace. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." This wasn't pessimism, it was presence. It was a radical call to wake up. Because when you recognize that each breath could be your last, every word carries weight, every choice becomes sacred. Think about that. How many times have you walked past someone you love, barely noticing them? How many conversations have you rushed through, assuming you'd have another chance? How many days have you spent on autopilot, drowning in minor frustrations, missing the miracle of just being alive? Now imagine this instead. You wake up tomorrow, and know, deeply and clearly, that this day is a gift, not guaranteed. Suddenly, the coffee tastes richer. The morning light feels warmer. You speak to your partner with more kindness. You listen without distraction. You forgive without hesitation. That's not romanticism. That's memento mori in action. It's not about gloom. It's about urgency. Not panic, but precision. Not dread, but devotion. When you accept that life is finite, you stop chasing everything and start choosing what truly matters. This is what gave the Stoics their incredible resilience. They were not fearless in the sense of recklessness. They were fearless because they understood what to fear and what not to. Death was not the enemy. Wasting life was. Seneca wrote letters from exile. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations on the battlefield. Epictetus taught freedom while living as a slave. What united them? A calm that came not from comfort, but from confrontation with the deepest truths of existence. They practiced death not morbidly, but mindfully, letting go of possessions, ego, attachments, illusions, so when the final letting go came, it would be gentle, natural, a continuation of a life already lived with clarity, and in that, they found rest, not because the world was quiet but because they were. A restless mind is often a mind unprepared for loss, but a stoic mind trained in memento mori is not frantic when something ends, that it knows all things are temporary, and it embraces them more deeply because they are temporary. So, if your mind is restless over deadlines, disappointments, uncertainty, look not just forward, look inward, look toward the inevitable, and let it shape your now, because the cure for a restless mind isn't in adding more, it's in facing what's already waiting and making peace with it, not in fear but in freedom. The still mind returning to the center, so we return where we began, not back to chaos, not back to noise, but to the still point at the center of it all, that quiet flame that doesn't flicker, even when the winds of life grow strong. The Stoics called this the hegemonikon, the ruling faculty, the seat of reason, the part of us that remains untouched no matter what storms outside, and after all, are wandering through fear, emotion, uncertainty, ambition, and even death. Now come home to this. A still mind is not an empty mind, it is a disciplined mind. It watches itself. It questions its impulses. It chooses its responses. But more than that, it remembers. That remembers that we are not disturbed by events, but by our judgments about them. It remembers that control begins with the self, not the world. It remembers that no praise, no insult, no misfortune can touch what is truly ours, our mind, our choices, our character. You might be surrounded by noise, notifications, deadlines, criticisms, comparisons, but you can still choose silence. You might face betrayal, loss, or uncertainty, but you can still choose peace. You might stumble, you might fall short, but you can still choose to rise with reason, with dignity, with humility. That is the core of Stoicism, not a set of harsh rules, not cold detachment, but a warm and steady strength, born from knowing who you are and what you can endure. Marcus Aurelius said, "The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." When your mind is restless, remind yourself of this. You are not your thoughts, you are the one who sees them. You are not your circumstances, you are the one who navigates them. You are not at the mercy of the world, you are the architect of your response, and in that response lies your freedom, in that choice lies your calm, in that moment lies your power. So when you next feel the pull of restlessness, the racing thoughts, the tight chest, the sense that time is slipping away, run from it. Don't drown it in distraction. Don't wrestle it with willpower. Just return to your breath, return to your values, return to that small but invincible place inside you that nothing can touch. That it is there, it has always been there. The Stoics didn't give us a way to escape life. They gave us a way to enter it fully, fiercely, wisely, and that's what the restless mind truly longs for. Not entertainment, not achievement, but alignment. With nature, with reason, with purpose. Stillness isn't a retreat, it's a return. To what matters, to what's real, to who you were always meant to be. And so, let the world do what it will. Let events rise and fall, let time pass, let others judge, let the storm rage. You stand still. Because a calm mind in a chaotic world isn't weakness, it's mastery.